Hello everyone, I'm here today to discuss with you a very complex case. We're going to go through the footsteps of Muhammad Atta and walk from his former base of operations here at Marienstrasse 54 in Hamburg, Germany. I'm going to give you the insights today of a few important investigations that have preceded this as a signals intelligence assessment. First, let me explain to you the two most important facts of 9/11. Everyone knew what the date was for the attacks, as George Bush Sr. had given us his planning on 9/11, 1991, in his New World Order speech, which I believe was his attempt to inform the people of a grand conspiracy, in which many people took heed to.
It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
A good man who informed the people of a date set then 10 years in the future, and that scenarios would start with Ramzi Yousef's first World Trade Tower attack and first scenario that was tested in 1993. Today we are going to assess the case of what was the immediate counter-organization, meaning those people in Germany at the time of the attacks who may have increased in numbers based on the assessment of Muhammad Atta's damage and the leadership of the Al-Qaeda. And then we are going to discuss a Cold War cold case file. This is part of assessing an agent in place program. Together, you and I, can assess a signals intelligence side in the attack selection and optimizations that planners had in every decision. We need to debate the importance of an address. Do we assume leadership exists that chooses 54 Marienstrasse from within its objectives, that inferred, that in some way then had been part of a secretive network operating from its own belief system? To assess this, I have here a fifth column ultra signals case and some World War II residual files.
Today's threat to our national security is not a matter of military weapons alone. We know of new methods of attack. The Trojan horse, the fifth column that betrays a nation unprepared for treachery. Spies, saboteurs, and traitors are the actors in this new strategy. These dividing forces are undiluted poison. They must not be allowed to spread in the new world as they have in the old. Our moral and our mental defenses must be raised up as never before against those who would cast a smokescreen across our vision.
That were developed in the event Germany ever attacked America. For when it happened, and be certain that the origin of the Hamburg cell was in fact from Germany, in order to assess the dynamics of the German-Afghan connection, it was best to start with the history of the Nazi Party in Afghanistan in World War II, and that is how this case began. Notwithstanding the use of ultra-signals files between the US and UK that started after the success of US and British government in breaking the Enigma Code in 1942. If you don't know what ultra or signals intelligence is, it is part of coded communication, then by the Allied war effort, compared to now the millions of lines of code used in software and the cybersecurity, and as well math and science majors working at breaking code often find the psychology of decision-making of lone wolves, individual state actors, or small groups such as the Hamburg Cell are incomprehensible and impossible to believe that extended leadership and chains of command in the Al-Qaeda leadership did not have a culture of finance from state sponsors and therefore motive. Therefore, as agent saboteurs, as agents of influence, of useful idiots, it is hard to disassociate from how a leadership command chain controls its cells. Therefore, forensic psychology and code breaking have a place in which work together. Therefore,
Watson is a question-answering system. A question can be posed in natural language, and having read a whole bunch of information, data, documents, come up with a very precise answer to that question.
But after all, what a Grand Master did was just look ahead and analyze various possibilities, wasn't it? And computers could be taught to do that. But not easily, and for decades, not very well. Still, by the mid-1980s, computer chess programs began challenging and occasionally beating Grand Masters. It remained unclear whether they could ever defeat the world's best. That can examine 200 million possible moves every second. They call it
from the history of the White Guard, a Nazi battalion in World War II developed to combat the Soviet forces. We will look into the Hamburg cell under the signals intelligence and forensic psychology assessment. I'm now going to explain a fifth column and what Ultra was during World War II and how this investigation is using a base expansion file and investigating the base and the so-called Marienstrasse 54 base of Muhammad Atta. From my previous investigations that you can see in Cold War cold case files in a project with the same titled movie, 3-Year Killings, a Kickstarter project, which you can see the final updates, 30 and 31, the context to assessing Marienstrasse 54 is quite different. Let us start with the Broadway SIS headquarters at 54 Broadway and the Lindenstrasse 54 Stasi headquarters as we continue the part of 3-Year Killings, a online detective mystery in ascertaining who done it, Department X, Station X, or Line X, as we argue how Station X, a World War II Bletchley Park headquarters code-breaking office, and Line X and Station X differ in so much as we debate on a terror cell's leadership from a White Guard between Hamburg and Germany, and with Bush Sr. and Jr.'s effort to inform the world of the grand conspiracy of a new world order with investigations into the Soviet Union, with finance to combat the Soviet Union in Operation Cyclone, as financing the Mujahideen. In this case of how Bush helped us combat the new world order, every selection is specific, every idea is succinct. This is the most important part in understanding how people who finance terror enable terror cells to decisions that, as we know in today's counterterrorism, often include supercomputing and optimizers and planning to discern what planning in this single selection exists. Be that the Marienstrasse 54 base of operations selection, we will assume a war scenario planned by IBM Watson supercomputer. With a list of all known addresses of 54 with any value of importance was compiled before today, and all of which were assessed from a communication router logic we have referred to as MEMEX memory, and assumed some dialogue that was or was not hidden in attackers' network had evolved from Stasi GRU networks. This will make sense later as we discuss how communication of leadership had engaged against its target by an optimization selection criteria in a stage of planning that is called target setting. For us to assert, as has been the case of 3 previous investigations, first the Malden, Massachusetts, and the Charlestown billionaire Flatley House that harbored members of the Laden family in Massachusetts and who were treated as victims and immediately removed from the U.S. and sent to Saudi Arabia by way of an all-expense-paid trip to Saudi Arabia, that those findings will be annotated within the footnotes of this broadcast. The second case assessed in order of a custody chain of evidence that a U.S. and Russian bear bomber exercised in the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap had been compromised over 300 days prior to the attacks that had signaled Flight 77 as a target in Norman, Oklahoma, by what was conveyed by geodata or metadata, and that within those 3 investigations, criticism of a leadership with at least insights into U.S.-Russian exercise date planning and or opposition to U.S.-Russian exercise date planning are pertinent to this investigation. What today is starting an assessment from questions that argue an agent-in-place sweep, and from that we have learned in SVR operations of dormancy that some cells can stay dormant for over 10 years before being called into action.
play the game.
We're in.
But it was the wrong computer.
Russians are still denying everything, sir.